I'm Matt Harlan. I'm 36 years old, former logistics captain in the U.S. Army, born into a family where the uniform was more than tradition, it was identity. My grandfather fought in Korea, my dad served in Desert Storm, and I signed up the day I turned 18, thinking I'd carry the torch forward with pride. We weren't rich, but we were proud. Middle-class small-town church on Sundays, folded flags on the mantle. I learned discipline before I could drive and loyalty before I understood what it might cost. I spent 14 years building systems that saved lives. I managed supply chains that fed forward bases, patched fuel leaks mid-storm, and optimized convoy routes so tight they shaved hours off travel time in hostile zones. I wasn't a hero with medals, but I made sure heroes made it home. Which is why that night, standing outside a private hall, while my name was left off the guest list, something in me broke. The Army had just transitioned me into a civilian role as an operations advisor on a joint logistics project. I had spent 6 months redesigning the entire system from scratch, building a platform that cut waste by 27%, improved real-time tracking, and predicted equipment failures before they happened. And yet, as I stood in a hotel lobby in full-dress uniform, folder in hand, I wasn't allowed inside. The man at the door looked confused when I gave my name, then apologetic when he said the room was full. I saw the plaque through the glass, and my stomach turned. They were toasting someone else. A young analyst named Ken, who'd only been there 6 weeks, smiling awkwardly while presenting my diagrams. The same ones I'd printed, marked, tested, and revised over dozens of sleepless nights. I should have expected it. The project director, Colonel Marshall, had asked me to forward my full report just 2 weeks prior. Said he needed it for final review. I guess that meant removing my name and pasting Ken's on top. There was a seat at the table, just not for the man who built it. I stood in the hotel lobby, the hum of laughter and the clink of glasses seeping through the closed doors like salt in a wound. The banquet hall shimmered with golden light, the kind they reserve for generals and handshakes that decide careers. I wasn't supposed to be out here. The man at the door wore a rented tux and a nervous look. He glanced down at his clipboard, then back at me like I'd handed him a problem too complicated to solve. "Sorry, sir. Capacity's been reached." I leaned in, pointing to my name. Captain Matthew Harlan. I led the task force for Operation Nexus. Logistics, redesign, 6-month overhaul. That's my project they're presenting in there. He shifted, muttered something about instructions, and avoided my eyes. Through the glass I saw Ken Young, clean-shaved, fresh from ROTC, standing on the stage like he'd just won the Nobel. He tapped the mic, smiled awkwardly, and started flipping through slides that I'd personally built. Diagrams, equations, field tests. Every line of code, every efficiency tweak, every workaround I'd created under fire. My throat tightened. The audience clapped when he mentioned predictive routing. I'd spent 3 nights in a desert outpost sketching that module on the back of a ration box. Ken didn't even know how to bypass a frozen tracker 3 weeks ago. And there, front row, nodding like a proud father, was Colonel Marshall, my former superior. The same man who had asked for my final report said he needed it to finalize presentation prep. Said he wanted to make sure the brass understood the depth of my work. I didn't expect a trophy, but I never expected this. My hand clenched around the folder. Inside were the original designs version, logs, time-stamped iterations from my personal drive. I'd kept backups, watermarked diagrams, even my scribbled notes from the field. Not because I didn't trust anyone, because I'd been in the Army long enough to know that trust doesn't mean much in a room full of promotions. I sat on the hallway bench like a man trying not to fall apart in public. Behind the glass, champagne flowed. Ken smiled. Marshall clapped. And my work, my months of sacrifice, had been stripped of my name. I opened my laptop, logged into the hotel Wi-Fi, pulled up the secure folder, and highlighted the files. Subject line: Nexus Alpha, original author verification. I attached the framework that drafts the source code and internal memos Marshall had replied to, with clear acknowledgement of my authorship. Then I added every senior contact in the Defense Innovation Board. The generals who'd funded us. The procurement chiefs who'd asked for results. I added Marshall too. Let him see it hit in real time. My finger hovered over the send key. My heart was pounding, but my jaw was set. This wasn't revenge. It was truth. I clicked send. 5 seconds passed. Then 10. Then from the ballroom a subtle shift. Phones buzzed. Heads turned. One by one, officers looked down at their screens. The applause stopped. Ken paused mid-sentence. Marshall reached for his phone like it was burning a hole in his chest. I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked out the front door. I didn't have a seat at their table, so I flipped the damn thing over. I used to believe that hard work spoke for itself, that if you fixed enough broken things and kept your head down eventually, someone would notice. I stayed late, ran silent drills, rewrote outdated protocols, and cut resupply delays in half during my first year. But recognition never came. My name got buried under reports labeled by someone else. A lieutenant once presented my maintenance overhaul plan at a quarterly review and thanked the admin team for formatting it. I didn't say anything, just kept showing up. One time during a blackout in Kuwait, I patched a corrupted logistics node using nothing but a field laptop and a satellite workaround I tested weeks earlier. The convoy left on time. The next day, Command issued a memo praising the system for its resilience. There was no mention of who made that system resilient, and after a while the silence settled in like dust. You stop expecting applause. You start telling yourself that the mission is what matters. I built inventory trackers from scratch, streamlined fuel consumption on outdated rigs, and corrected GPS drift errors that had been chalked up to bad luck for years. Each fix got used. Each one saved time or money or manpower, but nobody asked who made them. I remember standing in the back of a tent while a colonel praised our new supply routing algorithm. He called it a game changer. I'd written it after waking up at 3 a.m. for a week straight, chasing a flaw in the convoy logs. I never even got a nod. Over time, that kind of invisibility starts to wear on you. Not like a punch, more like water. Slow and steady, eroding whatever belief you had that merit mattered. It didn't happen all at once. But bit by bit, I stopped believing anyone was coming to hand out credit. It hit me one night when I was walking out of HQ still holding a report I'd rewritten 3 times for someone else's briefing. The parking lot was half lit and quiet, but in my chest something had snapped. I realized I was done waiting for someone to give me credit. That week I started keeping my own records. Not just backups, but detailed logs. Diagrams, notes, even audio clips I recorded after field tests, just to capture the logic behind what I built. I moved my work to a private drive. No more drafts on the shared server. No more updates left in team folders. If they wanted to steal something, they'd have to work a lot harder. The next idea I had, I didn't share. I stayed up late at my kitchen table, sketching it out on yellow notepads. It was a framework to predict equipment degradation across deployments using pattern data from repair logs. I didn't build it to impress anyone. I built it because I wanted to prove at least to myself that I was still capable of creating something no one else could. That my work had value, even if they refused to see it. Every night while others slept or celebrated another hollow ceremony, I wrote code on my own machine. I researched patent laws. I studied private sector logistics firms. The more I worked, the more it stopped feeling like side notes and started feeling like a blueprint. I wasn't just building a tool. I was building an exit. I stopped playing their game. And for the first time in years, I wasn't tired. I was clear. I was angry. And I was ready. The first person I called was Diaz. He used to run back-end systems for our forward bases and once rewrote a broken deployment script during a sandstorm with a dying battery. The Army gave him a certificate. I gave him a seat. at the table. Next was Lou from data analytics. She used to find patterns in supply chain gaps that nobody else even saw. When I told her what I was building, she didn't even pause. Just said, finally. We met in garages, diners, and quiet corners of the base no one cared about. We called it the war room, but it didn't look like much. Just a whiteboard, some laptops, and 5 people who were tired of being overlooked. Each one of us carried scars. Missed promotions, ideas stolen, credit handed off to someone louder or better connected. But under all that, we carried something else. Drive. I brought in Parker, the guy who could talk anyone into anything. He once secured a multi-unit transfer by making the numbers sound like a gift to command. We needed that kind of voice. Then came Riaz, the logistics wizard, who once rerouted 5 convoys mid-mission without breaking a sweat. They used his plan for months and never even told him. I did. In that small circle, we started building something no command chain could steal. Diaz wrote the core system. Lou mapped the data flow. Parker started pitching potential contacts on the civilian side. Riaz pressure tested every scenario we built. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to shrink into the background. They listened. They added. They pushed the system further than I could have alone. We weren't just dreaming. We were designing. Each late night, each shared coffee, every silent nod across the room reminded me we weren't broken. We were just never allowed to be whole. This time, we'd build it our way. Quiet, focused, unstoppable. It started with a demo. Lou and I flew to Frankfurt with nothing but a laptop, a binder, and the confidence built from months of late nights. We pitched our system to a logistics auditor from a multinational humanitarian agency. They didn't blink. Ran simulations, checked timestamps, asked the right questions. Then they offered a 2-month trial on the spot. That trial changed everything. Delivery delays dropped by 18%. Cost overruns fell below target. After the 2nd week, they scheduled a call. I'll never forget that moment. The program director leaned in, eyes sharp but smiling, and said we were exactly what they'd been searching for. We want to back this fully. I flew back, heart pounding. The second my boots hit American soil, I called the team. They were scattered across time zones, jobs, and distractions, but every one of them picked up. We met that weekend in Ray's basement. Dusty floors, leftover pizza laptops open. I laid out the contract, the numbers, the chance to go from ghost operators to something real. We named it Trueline Logistics, because for once, we were going to draw the path forward ourselves. No red tape. No brass stealing the mic. We filed the paperwork. Bought foldable desks off a liquidation site. Parker pulled in a lawyer from a friend's firm who gave us startup rates because he believed in what we were doing. That night, after everyone left, I stayed behind. Sat alone, staring at our new company seal, freshly printed on a cheap office printer. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I took a photo and sent it to my father, a retired quartermaster sergeant who spent his life making sure others had what they needed, but rarely got asked what he wanted. His reply was short: make it count. We were no longer rebuilding broken systems. We were replacing them. And this time we owned every piece. The night before the Defense Innovation Summit, I barely slept. Not because I was nervous, but because I knew exactly what I was about to do. After all the years of silence, I was finally ready to speak. Our press release was queued. So were the resignation letters. 7 signatures, 1 mission. We'd timed it to hit inboxes at the peak of the ceremony. While the brass toasted Ken for his so-called breakthrough, our emails started dropping like bombs. One by one, the phones buzzed, heads turned, eyes widened. Every line of code, every patent filing, every data set, time-stamped and traced. Our framework, our innovation. Their theft laid bare. Then came the walkouts. Lou from analysis. Diaz from backend. Parker from operations. One after another, the backbone of the system stood up and walked out. No words, just purpose. At the same time, our site went live. The media picked it up within minutes. Defense blogs, trade networks, even a veteran podcast that usually ignored tech stories had it front page by noon. And then I walked into the summit. The room went quiet. I could feel it before I stepped on stage. The same people who once dismissed me now leaned forward, waiting. I looked out over the crowd. Generals, contractors, analysts, and from the front row my team. Liu nodded once. Diaz gave me the smallest smile. Reyes sat straight-backed, eyes locked. I stepped up to the podium, adjusted the mic, let the silence breathe. They told me to wait outside. The words landed like a stone in water. Ripples moved through the audience. A few people exchanged looks. Most just stared. They told me I didn't belong in the room, that my work was too small, too quiet, too buried in code and crates. So I built my own room. I didn't name names. Didn't have to. Everyone knew what had happened at Logistics Command. Everyone had read the leaks. Instead, I talked about how innovation doesn't come from titles. It comes from trust. From recognizing the people doing the work, not the ones taking the credit. Behind me, the screen lit up. Charts. Results. The new TrueLine system outperforming the legacy setup by double digits. Across delivery times. Maintenance gaps. Cost metrics. We proved it could be done better. Not louder. Smarter. The applause started slow, then grew. Not just polite. Real. People standing. Even some who had tried to shut us down. I walked off that stage, not with revenge in my chest, but something better. Peace. Backstage, I found my team. Lou gave me a quick hug. Parker slapped my shoulder. Reyes said nothing, just handed me a folded napkin. Inside a scribbled note. We started here. Let's keep going. Later that night, we met at a small bar across from the Summit Hotel. No fanfare. Just us. Laughing, sharing stories, remembering where it all began. And as I looked around the table, I realized something. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of the future. One we built with our own hands. Together.